then the heart of the American Midwest, was a quiet town where everyone knew each other. With its tree-lined streets and a single main road, it was the kind of place where dreams felt far away but never impossible. For generations, families lived here, passing down stories of hard work and resilience. In this peaceful town lived 17-year-old Emily Thompson. With graduation looming, she faced the typical small-town dilemma: stay in Maple Ridge like her parents, or chase the dream of a bigger life in the city. As the leaves turned orange and gold that fall, Emily began to feel the weight of her decision more than ever. Emily had always dreamed of leaving Maple Ridge. While her friends seemed content with staying, finding local jobs and starting families, she wanted more. The shimmering lights of New York City called to her in ways that only her journal knew. She longed for the thrill of the unknown, the excitement of possibilities beyond the cornfields. Her parents, though supportive, were rooted in Maple Ridge. They had lived their entire lives in the town, as had their parents before them. "There's something comforting about staying where you're known," her mum would say. But Emily felt like she was meant for something bigger, something that would stretch her wings. Emily received a letter that would change her life. It was from New York University, the school of her dreams. Her heart raced as she tore it open, reading the words that seemed to jump off the page. "Congratulations, Emily. We are pleased to offer you admission." She ran to her parents with the letter, unsure of how they would react. Her mum smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. Her dad hugged her tightly, but Emily could sense the hesitation. The tension of leaving behind the life she knew for the unknown was beginning to settle in. Teeter in hand, Emily had a choice to make. Maple Ridge was safe, predictable, and filled with people who loved her. New York was the opposite: unknown, challenging, but full of opportunity. Her parents sat with her at the dinner table, offering advice but leaving the decision to her. "Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that push us to grow the most," her dad said quietly, sensing Emily's inner conflict. That night, Emily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the future would hold and if she had the courage to leap into the unknown. After much thought, Emily made her choice. She would leave for New York. Her final days in Maple Ridge were bittersweet. She spent time with friends, walking the familiar streets and visiting the diner where they had shared countless milkshakes and fries after school. The day she left, the entire town gathered at the train station to bid her farewell. The old locomotive puffed steam into the chilly air as her friends hugged her tightly. As the train pulled away, Emily watched her town fade into the distance, tears mixing with excitement in her eyes. Arriving in New York City was like stepping into another world. The towering skyscrapers, the rush of people, and the constant hum of activity overwhelmed Emily at first. Her small-town roots made everything feel foreign and a little intimidating, but there was something exhilarating about it too. Emily moved into her tiny dorm room and marveled at the city that never seemed to sleep. As she unpacked, she thought of Maple Ridge and her family. This new life was everything she had dreamed of, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she had left a part of herself behind. College life was different from anything Emily had known. The classes were challenging, and the students came from all over the world with stories and experiences that made Emily feel small at times. But she found solace in her love for writing, using it as an outlet to express the whirlwind of emotions she was feeling. In between classes, Emily would explore the city. She visited Central Park, the bustling streets of Times Square, and found quiet moments at the local coffee shops where she'd sit with her notebook, jotting down her thoughts. Slowly but surely, New York began to feel a little more like home. As the months passed, Emily found a small group of friends who, like her, were navigating the balance between ambition and homesickness. They'd gather in the dorm's common room, swapping stories about their hometowns and dreams for the future. Though she was settling into city life, there were moments when Emily longed for the simplicity of Maple Ridge. The constant noise and hustle of the city could be overwhelming, and sometimes she missed the quiet serenity of home. One evening, Emily received a call that brought her back to reality. Her mother was sick, nothing serious, but serious enough to remind Emily of how far away she was. The weight of her choice to leave home began to press on her as she realized the toll her absence was taking on her family. She contemplated flying back, even for a short visit, but her parents insisted she stay focused on her studies. "We're proud of you, Em. You're doing great things," her dad reassured her, but Emily's heart remained heavy. After months in New York, Emily finally returned home for Thanksgiving. The familiar scent of her mother's cooking and the sight of her childhood home brought back a wave of nostalgia. Maple Ridge hadn't changed, but Emily had. Her friends were still there, some already settling into jobs and relationships. The sense of community was comforting, but for the first time Emily felt out of place in the town she once called home. New York had become a part of her, and she realized she was living between two worlds. As Emily navigated her second year in New York, she found herself at a crossroads. She was offered an internship at a prestigious publishing house, a dream opportunity that could pave the way for her future career. But the demands of the job meant less time to visit home, and she felt the distance from Maple Ridge growing wider. Her parents remained supportive, but she could hear the sadness in her mother's voice when they spoke. The tension between her ambitions and her love for her family was becoming harder to balance. The decision to accept the internship weighed heavily on Emily. She knew it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but the thought of being further away from her family gnawed at her. Her mother's health was improving, but it wasn't lost on Emily that time was precious. Her friends in New York encouraged her to take the leap, reminding her that her family would always be there. But as Emily sat in her dorm room, staring at the skyline, she couldn't shake the feeling that the pursuit of her dreams came with significant sacrifices. Emily took the internship, diving headfirst into the fast-paced world of publishing. She thrived in the environment, learning from some of the best in the business and feeling more accomplished than ever. But with each new success, the distance between her and Maple Ridge grew. Her visits home became less frequent, and her connection to the town felt more like a memory than a reality. She was proud of how far she had come, but a part of her still longed for the comfort and simplicity of the life she had left behind. One day, Emily received an invitation in the mail that brought her emotions to the surface. It was for her best friend Megan's wedding, back in Maple Ridge. The invitation was a reminder of how much had changed since she left. Her friends were moving on, settling into the lives they had always envisioned, while Emily's life in New York was anything but settled. The idea of returning to Maple Ridge for such a significant event stirred up mixed feelings. Would she still fit in? Or had the gap between her and her hometown grown too wide to bridge? Emily returned to Maple Ridge for the wedding, unsure of what to expect. As she walked through the familiar streets, memories of her childhood came flooding back. The town hadn't changed much, but Emily felt like an outsider now, observing a life she had once been a part of but had left behind. At the wedding, surrounded by old friends and familiar faces, Emily realized how much she had missed. Her friends were building lives and families while she chased a dream that often felt out of reach. It was a bittersweet reunion, filled with laughter and nostalgia, but also a sense of loss. After the wedding, Emily spent time with her parents, who seemed older than she remembered. Sitting on the porch with her dad, he asked her a question that lingered in the air. "Are you happy?" It was a simple question, but one Emily hadn't allowed herself to answer honestly in a long time. She had achieved so much, but in that moment she wasn't sure if happiness was the right word. The drive to succeed had pushed her forward, but at what cost? Her dad's words stayed with her long after she returned to New York. Back in the city, Emily found herself questioning her choices. The internship had turned into a full-time job, and she was climbing the ladder of success. But the more she achieved, the more she realized that success didn't always equate to fulfillment. She began to wonder if the life she was chasing in New York was truly what she wanted. The city, once exciting and full of promise, now felt like a place where she was losing touch with herself. The question her father had asked, "Are you happy?" echoed in her mind. For the first time, Emily began to contemplate if the price of her ambition was too high. She started slowing down, spending more time reflecting on what brought her joy. Was it the hustle of city life, or the simpler moments she'd taken for granted back home? As she walked through the crowded streets of Manhattan, Emily realized that maybe she had been measuring success by the wrong standards. One evening, Emily received a letter from her mother. It was a handwritten note, something her mum often did to keep in touch. But this letter was different. In it, her mother talked about the small joys of Maple Ridge, the changing seasons, a new bakery that had opened, and the local fairs that Emily used to love. The letter ended with a simple message: "We miss you, Em. Come visit when you can." It struck Emily deeply. Her mother's words reminded her that while life in the city was exciting, there was still a part of her that belonged in Maple Ridge. She began to think that maybe, just maybe, her future didn't have to be all or nothing. While in Maple Ridge, Emily began writing again, but not for her career this time, it was for herself. She found peace in the quiet moments, walking through the fields she had once taken for granted and reconnecting with old friends. She realized that success didn't always have to be defined by the city's standards. In the end, Emily discovered that her journey wasn't about choosing between Maple Ridge and New York, it was about finding balance. She learned that she could have a successful career without losing touch with the things that truly mattered to her. After months of reflection, she decided to split her time between the two places, allowing her to chase her dreams while staying grounded in her roots. Emily's story was a reminder that life doesn't always follow a straight path. Sometimes it takes going far from home to realize how important home really is. And as she sat on the porch of her childhood home, looking out at the setting sun, Emily felt a deep sense of peace. She had found what she was searching for, not in the city and not in the town, but within herself.